Good morning, guys. Happy Monday. I hope everyone is well. It is the 13th of April, and this is your daily market outlook for today. So, before we get into the charts, just understand that the content on this Discord and in these videos are for educational and informational purposes only. I'm not a financial advisor, and nothing shared in my Discord and videos should be considered financial or investment advice. You should always conduct your own research before making any financial decisions. Understand that any past results also discussed from myself does not guarantee future results. You are always responsible for your own financial decisions. So, jumping into the charts today, let's see what is going on. Um, Firstly, I'm just going to quickly talk about obviously the fact of what I mentioned in the Discord with obviously the dollar and Iran and the US and so on and so on, because it is in a bit of a tug of war. And what I mean by a bit of a tug of war is, the geopolitical side says that dollar should rise, whereas the data from, the fundamentals says dollar should fall. So it is in a bit of a tug of war at this moment in time. Now, what does that mean for us? That means for us that we are obviously gonna have to be very careful because we don't know really which way market is going to go when it comes to the dollar. Geopolitical side saying that it should rise, the fundamental, data side saying it should fall. So, which one is going to play out, which one is actually going to work, we will obviously find out, during this week. Now, going into the dollar, you can see that nothing's changed as much, from last week. Of course, market started to go bearish in here. We had no real breakout until obviously today. So as you guys can obviously see, we had the dollar bullish, and that is simply, as I just mentioned, because that is the geopolitical side where the dollar should rise. So the dollar's obviously had that little bit of momentum, here, which obviously means for the major pairs, you've had a little bit of a drop. So, is that an indication going into today, or going into this week where we should look for bulls? Well, potentially, but also understanding that the data is doing the opposite. So, let's see anyway. But going into the dollar, let's have a look at what's going on. We do have quite a lot of imbalance to fill up here. Ideally, daily lower high and daily lower low is here. So yes, ideally we would want to see, let's say up into these areas so that we can potentially look for some, shorts for the long term. From a technical standpoint, like this. And obviously we've been talking about that for quite some time, as you guys can tell now, of course. We know that we're reacting from this 1 hour demand area. We obviously had a lower time frame structure broke, coming to this 4 hour demand area here. But the 1 hour was, obviously selling off. Now, of course, what's happened at this moment in time is if we drop down to the 1 hour, we can see that from this break here, we had obviously this structure, but then we also had the 1 hour shorting. So we had the 1 hour supply in control up until obviously now. So yes, 1 hour has gone bullish. This is a 1 hour low, 1 hour higher high. So ideally, from a technical standpoint, if we wanted to see market push above, if we want to see this imbalance, filled, then we could obviously potentially look for this 4 hour demand area to be the reason that we start to have that bullish, momentum upwards. Now, of course, I'm looking at the fact of this looks like a liquidity sweep from here, and I'm trying to think from, the opposite side. If it was to obviously go bearish, then obviously it would have to be a lower time frame analysis where this is taking out Asian high, and then it would obviously have to be a lower time frame short. So, from a professional standpoint, you can look at this and go, should I look for shorts and longs at the same time? And yeah, you can potentially do that. But from a technicals, of course, if we look at the fact of, you know, we're in this 1 hour demand, we've reacted out of this 1 hour demand and this 4 hour demand now. We've got this fresh new demand area. Ideally, from the technicals, it would be nice to see how market reacts from this demand area to see if we do get that longs. If not, then of course, shorting will be a priority going into the rest of this week. Going into your USD, pretty much the same scenario. You can see that we have, daily higher low, daily higher high is here. Obviously, market structure right at this moment in time. Ideally, we want to see whenever you guys know this anyway from trading with me, but when we see that we've got a daily range, daily higher low, daily higher high. We know eventually we want to see market have that shift into, you know, the lower time, into a demand area on the daily. So ideally, we'd need to see a 4 hour and a 1 hour, short into this daily demand area, for instance. And then we can obviously make a decision to see if the daily then will go and create that new daily higher high. So, you know, obviously that is something that I always look at. And at this moment in time, obviously we haven't started to break low into the lower range of this daily range. So of course, you know, ideally what we'd want to see is if market could give us something like this from the technicals into, you know, the lower than 50%, we can obviously start marking out some daily 4 hour demand areas to then potentially go back to that daily structure of being, creating a new higher high. So from a technicals looking at this at this moment in time, we can see that market structure here has started to react from a 1 hour supply area that we talked about heavily last week. We created them equal highs. We had, you know, this bullish movement happen, market coming to this demand. Then we've had obviously this bullish reaction at this moment in time into that supply area. And then we've had that dump off going into today. Now, what does that tell what does that tell me? Well, that tells me from the technicals that of course we've broken this range that we had, but this obviously does look more like a liquidity sweep. Now, if the dollar, for instance, does go bullish from that demand area, we can expect bearishness from this 4 hour supply. That is obviously what looks like most likely could happen from a technical. But again, just in my mind, I'm thinking about the political side of it, the geopolitical side of it potentially, dollar obviously doing the opposite. Sorry, the data from the fundamentals doing the opposite. So that is just what's playing in my mind at this moment in time. Ideally, if you guys are unsure, the best option would be let's see how today reacts. Like, is today going to come in here, go short, or is today going to, carry on bullish, and then we can capitalize? Because obviously, let's say market obviously is taking out these lows, and then let's say we get a break above this, then we would be a lot more confident in taking longs. So it depends on you. It depends on your strategy. It depends on what you want to do today. But just be aware from a fundamental standpoint, fundamentals control these market, technicals come second. Now, same scenario for GBP USD. We obviously have this daily higher low, daily higher high. You know, we have a lot of imbalance to fill. We have, the likes of these demand areas below, in which, could be a reason why market could come short and then carry that daily trend onwards. But at this moment in time, we are obviously still consolidating from this area here, market coming to this supply when I was still in control, and then we've had this break. So from a technical look, what we could identify is if the dollar goes bullish again, we can obviously identify that we should potentially look for some shorts from this 4 hour supply area. That is ideally what we could look for, see how we react from here. If it gives us the indication that we are going to go short, then we can obviously look for that. But again, just be aware of obviously the fundamental side of it potentially doing the opposite, and the dollar, absolutely melting off, and that means obviously then the major pairs being more on the bullish side. So yeah, just keep in mind with that. But ideally from the technicals, shorts for me anyway are my favorable option at this moment in time. But let's see. NZUSD, I don't really. It's not a massive. It's not a massive thing that I'm looking for at this moment in time. Just being totally honest with you. Of course, what we can keep an eye on is the fact that if we look at the four, we obviously have this, a lot of imbalance in this 4 hour. This 4 hour demand area to obviously come into eventually. But what we can see at this moment in time is it's a bit choppy here. Yes, if you look at the 1 hour, you can see that we went from uptrend into a downtrend. We obviously have this level of area here, which market is, reacting from at this moment in time as a 1 hour supply. And we also do have this 1 hour supply area, which was untouched above. So, if the dollar does, get into these areas down below and it starts to go obviously bullish, then, ideally we can look out for where market is at. But again, we're obviously in this 1 hour supply at this moment in time. But for me, the dollar's not in this 4 hour demand, so it's not going to be my favorable option. We could punch more above. We've got some imbalance literally above here. Let me just zoom in. We've got some imbalance above this area here. And of course, we have that 1 hour supply area. So ideally, if technicals stays bearish, we could see a punch above into that supply, aligned with the dollar, and then of course have that move away for NU. So going into AUD USD, of course we had this supply area, which we was analyzing. Markets come up again above. We have again now taken out this high here, punched above that supply area as well, and now obviously had that bearishness. But again, for me, it's just a bit, ugly, even just looking at this 4 hour candle, because it looks like a liquidity sweep, for bulls to carry on. But again, if everything depends on the dollar, if it was to carry on bearish, I would be looking at this 4 hour supply area here. So look, it's going to be interesting. You guys can see that, we're trying to analyze the charts and look from both perspectives, from a fundamental perspective and a technical perspective. But I'm not stupid in understanding the fundamental side. I can see the best technical setup, which would be, like so let's say shorts from here, dollar looks like it's going to go long from that demand. But I'm also understanding that from a fundamental perspective, it could be just absolutely the opposite, depending on obviously what's going on with that tug of war, which I mentioned. But yeah, 4 hour supply, we look at the 1 hour, you can see pretty much aligns with, of course, that supply area. We have obviously a 1 hour supply inside that 4 hour as well. So something to keep an eye on going into today. Now, USD CHF, we was reacting out this obviously demand. Again, we've come low, taken out this liquidity. As you guys can see, liquidity sweep, and then we've had that bullishness. So depending on what the dollar does, if the dollar carries on bullish, then of course we can expect, for me anyway, some sort of bullishness from USD CHF in and around these areas. Market, depending on where the dollar is, it could potentially take this low and then get that bullishness happen if the dollar, of course, goes bullish. If not, then we can make a decision on how to obviously short this. But I'm interested to see how we do carry on reacting, going into obviously the rest of this week. USD CHF, we're inside this 4 hour supply zone, which we've been talking about for some time. We can refine that 4 hour supply zone now to the last, the last buy candle that caused this movement down. So we're inside of that 4 hour supply. But of course, if we look at the internal structure on a 1 hour, we have 1 hour higher high, higher low, higher high. So again, probably the nicest setup at this moment in time would be USD Japanese yen. And the reason it would be USD Japanese yen would just be because it aligns with the fact of if the dollar carries on bearish, we're inside of this 4 hour supply area to do that. Which would obviously mean we could then, if we break below this, we would be then understanding that, yes, we could definitely short this long term. But from understanding the 1 hour, we can see that this demand area does align. Sorry, guys, my phone is going absolutely mental for some reason. We can see that this does align with, of course, this area here. So if the dollar goes bullish, then of course we can expect the bullishness to carry on from here. So look, yes, it is one of them scenarios where I'm going to be honest with you guys, market conditions are shocking at this moment in time, in my opinion anyway, just because of the fundamental side with obviously what's going on with Iran and the US. Everything's about coming to a deal, and then the deal's off, coming to a deal, then the deal's off. So it is very ugly. So for me, it's going to be one of them where I'm just going to wait and see what happens. And if it presents itself and I like it, of course, I will take it. But for me personally, I'm just going to be extremely careful because of the fundamental side. So yeah, as you guys can probably already tell. But other than that, guys, I appreciate every single one of you. We will catch up, obviously, for the rest of the week. As you guys know, I put into the Discord yesterday. I'm traveling to London today, this afternoon. Staying over in London, and then I fly out to America tomorrow. So obviously, depending on times, depending on what's what, obviously, I'll try and upload these daily market outlooks and be as active as I possibly can inside of Discord. Also, as well, understand that I don't think I can use my phone. I think it's similar to like Dubai. I don't think I can use my phone in America unless I buy like a SIM card. So potentially, I will be looking at buying a SIM card and hopefully can get some Wi-Fi so I can be on, on the Discord as much as possible. Other than that, guys, take care and God bless.